Hello, fellow Alone fans. It's that time of the year where we get to put down our predictions. I originally wasn't going to do this because it's difficult. We don't have a ton of information to go by, but I think it's still a fun thing. A few people mentioned, well, let's just go ahead and do it, and who cares if we're wrong? And I think that's the right way to do it. We put a little bit of risk out there, put ourselves out there, put our reputation on the line, so to speak, and if we're wrong, we're wrong. You know, who cares? It's a fun thing. This is for entertainment. People are on the show, and they're trying to compete, and they're out there for our entertainment, just as I put myself out there for your entertainment. And I appreciate all your predictions about comments and your guesses about how much our weight differential. So I appreciate that. And if you haven't done that, if you haven't been following our series, the Wilderness Living Challenge, go ahead and skip over on the channel. Join in the discussion, make your predictions. We have a firebox stove up for grab for the person who guesses the closest. So I'm welcoming the comments and criticism. So we're expecting these other contestants on the show alone, the big show where they're getting paid to do this sort of thing with the big prize at the end. Hope they're welcoming our comments as well. So without delaying anymore, let's get into my predictions for the show. These are my official predictions, the ones I think will do the best, and I've ranked them in order. I think the winner for season 3 alone will be Dan Wowak. He really impressed me with his trapping, and I think that's gonna be his mainstay for this season. He's gonna try to trap animals. We see an animal trapped in one of the previews. I would highly suspect that it was him that did it. So that will provide him with what looks like at least 4 days worth of food. If it's that, it looks like a small dog-like animal. So let's give him the win. What worries me about him is he has a big axe, a saw. It looks like he's going to process a lot of wood. He has a hammock, so he's probably not interested in living on the ground, but that means that he will be off the ground and can camp anywhere and won't be building a giant shelter. He only has 1 food ration, which is a little bit worrying, but it looks like he'll be able to provide for himself. Next in line, I have Greg Ovens. He's sort of a wild card in this. He's a drywaller, which I know quite a few drywallers, and they're tough guys, and they put themselves through a lot. If he's anything like the drywallers that I know, they work quite hard at their jobs, and as far as I'm concerned, they have high amounts of grit, determinations, and they're willing to put their bodies through a lot of shit. Drywalling is not an easy job. He also carries a little bit of extra weight on his belly, I noticed from the video, so that's going to help him last a long time. And in one of the previews, I see him where they pull his shirt up and they put a stethoscope to his back, and he looks like a rail where he's lost all that weight. So that tells me he's endured till the end or near the end. And this may surprise you from my initial predictions, but I've placed Zach Gault at number 3. Despite his skinniness, a lot of people have commented, and we've gone back and forth, and they've corrected me, and they said that body fat is not everything. It's something. We can't discard the fact that belly fat is an important characteristic, not a skill, but I guess putting on body fat is a skill, but having it is definitely an asset when it comes to the Alone Challenge. With what we know of the last winners, they've lost, tens and tens and tens of pounds, 30 pounds, 80 pounds, 60 pounds. I mean, having body fat is like carrying extra calories around. Zach doesn't have that, but what he does have is he spent over 30 days in the woods alone, and I think he's probably the only one on this series, on this show, this year, who has actually spent this amount of time in the woods and by himself at that. I've put him down as as a sort of a wild card because I don't think he can win the challenge, but he could surprise. So I definitely don't think he can win, but I think he can place quite high. I did my own calculations on my own body frame, how long I think I could go if I had a perfect strategy. So I think he can definitely place in the 30 plus day range, and not just because he spent 30 days, but he has to provide food for himself. He has only 1 food ration. I would have liked to see him take 2 food rations. I think for him, what we're going to see is a realization about how difficult it really is to find food. I think maybe him having similar background to me, but being much younger, he probably doesn't fully realize what it's like to actually gather food. Although he did mention in his casting tape that he has experienced hunger and he knows what hunger feels like. So he's going to have that grit and the determination to last as long as he can. So he's going to push his own personal limits, but I don't think he'll get to the top. I think he'll bump up against those other guys who have that extra weight to last. If they want to, of course. That's the determining factor. And that's the reason why he's not ranked so low, is because he has the willingness and the desire to suffer. So if Zach Gault, if you watch my original video, you'll always see that I've come around based on your casting tape. And I see in you characteristics that will carry you far in the show, but won't permit you to win it, in my opinion. And again, you may surprise me. We'll see. Number 4, I have Dave Nessia. He's an interesting kind of guy. He put some interesting comments in there where he wasn't able to tolerate mosquitoes, which I don't think will be a factor in the winter here in Patagonia. But he mentioned something about not being able to tolerate the wind. It seems like he is from a more arid environment, a more desert type of environment. So maybe he's not going to enjoy his stay there. So he may actually place worse than number 4, but it looks like he has that dirt time to back him up. He's got also two rations. He says he's not very familiar with the ferro rod, so it tells me maybe his bushcraft experience isn't where it should be. But it looks like also he's going to have to play around with the ferro rod while he's out there. So we'll see. He packed along 25 hooks, a big frying pan snare line. It looks like he's going to go after some animals there. Next in line, I have Megan Hannacek. I originally, in my list, I had her number 1, or not originally, but when I was playing around, I thought maybe she could go number 1. She has a gill net, the only person to bring a gill net, and I think that the gill net's going to be very productive if she can figure out how to use it. If she can find those small streams, those lakes look like they're fairly loaded with trout and probably don't get heavily fished. So if she can get if she can figure out how to get that gill net rocking for her, she can provide herself with a lot of food. She's also talking about making flies and using and producing flies, and she packed along fly line. So she might do something like Tenkara, where she's just casting the line out and catching lots of fish. So I would place her as a wild card as well. She could easily win the competition. I think if she's a smart person. It seems like she has a lot of fat reserves too. What worries me about her is maybe the fact that she has kids. She has 2 kids, I believe, and that could weigh her down and she could tap early. She strikes me as something like a replacement for Nicole. Somebody in the comments was mentioning that, and I agree totally. Megan Hannacek could be the replacement for Nicole. She can go up maybe place 4 or even 3, and maybe 2, and maybe even win this thing. So that she was a hard placement for me, but I did definitely move her up. Carleigh Fairchild, I think she's also an interesting one. More hippie-ish, easygoing. She's kind of got that smile on her face where she enjoys being out there. So she was hard to place too. Not a lot of information on her as far as her casting tape wasn't very revealing, but I thought that she could be one of those people who move up. Jim Shields, I didn't find him to be super strong, but he can go, one of those guys can go either way. He's got 2 times food ration, which I think is a smart thing to do. But in his casting tape, he mentioned that he was not a great hunter or fisher. So he may be that he's out there and doing the sorts of things that he believes will work and may not actually work in practice, which, as we all know, if we're an experienced woodsman, the theory and the practice are 2 totally different things. So he might be out there on a pretty steep learning curve. Zach Fowler is... I originally placed him much higher, but I ended up dropping him down further and further as I learned more about him. I had a conversation on Facebook, and I asked him about why he didn't have a gill net. And his answer was that he didn't know how to use a gill net. Now, to me, that's a very revealing statement, because if I was on the show, if I was going to make it on the show, and I didn't know how to use a gill net, and that was, I felt, a very worthwhile asset to bring, I would learn how to use the gill net. So I'm surprised by that. To me, that would have been ample time to play around with the gill net and even talk to some experts, meet up with people who have used gill nets before and get some tips and ideas. I mean, gill net's not a super difficult thing to learn how to use. You essentially set it up perpendicular to the shoreline. You have it try to reach the bottom, the most productive area of the lake, which is between 10, 12, 15 feet of water. Have it touch the bottom, like I said, and you're going to catch fish if the fish are there. So to me, it's actually quite striking that only one person brought a gill net on the show. And I think that if the lakes have fish at all, fish and a gill net passive, that's something to me that you can get your resting metabolic rate of calories. The 1,500 calories is the magic number on this competition. If you can get 1,500 calories and lay down for the day, you can last indefinitely. 1,500 calories is what a normal human body burns laying flat on its back while digesting food and not doing anything else. An active person will burn 250 to 150 calories per hour. A resting body burns 50 calories per hour. A cold resting body might burn 75 calories per hour. So having a good sleeping bag laying on your back, as Dave McIntyre did on season 2, is the correct strategy to win the show. He mentioned in his casting tape, Zach Fowler, that he brought a shovel, that he would dig a rocket stove. He brought a crosscut saw to make wood planks. He also brought fishing line and hooks. But I think those things are why he's on the show. He's going to be a project builder. He's going to build some great and fantastic things on the show and spend all this time and energy and body fat doing that. So I don't think that Zach Fowler is going to last very long doing this. I don't think he's going to win the show doing that. But I think he's going to build some fantastic things. So I've placed him in my bottom 3, my number 7 spot. But I think he's going to do some great things. I just don't think he's going to do some survival-based things. I think he's going to build great projects, but not last a long time. And he can move up also depending on how much he wants to suffer while he's building. He could easily supplant Jim Shields or Carleigh Fairchild or maybe perhaps probably not Megan Hannacek with her rations and gill net, but we shall see. Again, emotions are difficult to predict. And as we saw on season 2, emotions and season 1, emotions can get the best of some of these survivors, and they can just tap because they're missing their family, and we can't predict that. It's impossible to do so. Number 9, I have Britt Ahart. I thought maybe he might last longer. He seems like a heavier guy. He's got double food rations, but it didn't look like his skill was there. His casting tape wasn't super revealing except for his shelter. His shelter was terrible. I mean, he was inside and you could see the sky up above, so it looked like he basically built that shelter for fun. It didn't look like something he'd ever slept in, or if it rained, he'd be soaked. So I don't think his skill is there. His history and background as a Boy Scout is not sufficient to carry somebody through this competition. It takes a lot more. It takes understanding the theory of survival, like I say, counting the calories. However, hit with his body size, if he has the grit and determination and he really wants to last long, he could easily get up into the number 5, 6, 7 from top, or toward the top. But I doubt it. Again, surprises have happened in the show multiple times, and these lower ranking, mid-ranking people, it's really a mental game for them. As I've said in the comments before, somebody can win this challenge without doing any bushcraft at all. And that's the amazing thing. It's a body weight thing. If somebody wants to come in who is heavy and wants to do absolutely nothing and lay down in their sleeping bag, they can go a long way without actually having any skills whatsoever. The body has an amazing ability to adapt to starvation and last a long time. Finally, number 10 spot, the saddest spot to be, is Callie Blue. Her casting tape. Lots, you're going to say bad things because she's number 10, so I have to justify why I put her down at the bottom. It just seemed to me, she struck me as a person who was really focused on appearance, even in her pictures and what she was wearing, the scarf, the wool knitted sweater. Those are things that they're not practical things to wear in survival. And she strikes me as a person who's kind of superficial and may not have as many bush skills as she needs to. We see in the trailers her crying on the beach, which I think is fairly revealing. And so we already know she's going to be dealing with emotional issues right off the bat. And she talked about, just a chair can make you feel better. So she builds a chair and sits on the beach and cries. We know that just from looking at the previews along with the casting tape. So she ranks definitely number 10. As you saw initially, I ranked Gault number 10 just on his body weight, and that's a mistake. That's an oversight, because I assumed that these survivors, these contestants, had what it takes to win the challenge. They have all the other skills, but that's not the case. Not everybody has all the skills. Alone Show hasn't chosen these people because they were the top in the field. They chose these people because they wanted to make a good, entertaining show. So having somebody who's going to have a meltdown is good for TV, you know. I think Gault will have emotional. We've already seen him have in the previews having emotional episodes similar to what Larry did. Although Larry had the grit, and Zach will probably have the grit as well. Yeah, I think Callie's on there to represent that, you know, that emotional element, the yearning to get home and to get back to civilization. So I think that's why she's on the show. Anyway, those are my predictions. I welcome you to put your predictions down at the bottom. We'll do something fun. We'll do a little bit of ranking. If you followed and tracked along with my predictions last year, what I did was I gave myself, for every position I was off on each contestant, I gave myself a minus and a value for that. And then you do the sum of your value at the end. If you're right on, if you get the right position, you get 0 for that predictions. But most of the time I would get between, you know, minus 3, minus 4, and then would add that up as the season went on. So I think that would be a fun thing to do. So put your predictions down at the bottom and rank order. Do not edit your initial predictions. And at the end, we can revisit this video thread and we can check off and write down a tally and total score. And this is just for fun. I don't have a prize to offer for this. And we can tally up and see who does the best. So again, if you want to review how I did it last year, there'll be there's my official predictions for last year, and then I did a rank order, and then I also added the negative values. So please go ahead and do that. Again, it's a fun thing to do. Continue to think about what survival and modern survival looks like. So yeah, please do that, and let's see how close we can get.